I'm Margie Durham. I am 91 years old, will be 92 in March. I was born and raised in this house, and I'm making this film so my children can see how I was when I growed up. I was from a large family. We had 7 children. My mom and dad had 7 children and raised 2 great-grandkids and maybe 2 more in their later life. So it was a big family, and we weren't not rich, but we were rich compared to some people. I'll put it that way, because a lot of people didn't have anything, and we had to help them. We always raised 2 gardens, and in the spring we would can food, and in the wintertime they had dug a hole in the ground and put sawdust and stuff in there to keep the fruit warm, and we'd put apples and turnips in there, and we'd had fresh vegetables all winter. And my dad liked coffee, so there was always a big coffee pot on the stove with hot coffee. Anybody wanted coffee, and that's one thing I never did drink was coffee. I didn't like the smell of it. But I loved tea. My mother was a tea drinker. Her family was from London, and she didn't have a big family here, but what was here she was close to. And my grandmother on my mother's side died young. She had something wrong with her liver, and she died when my mother was young. And of course Mother had to take over and do things that any mother would do for their family. And my Mama's oldest sister was named Mary Hanner Smith, and she was our grandmother. After her grandmother passed away, she taken over, and she would treat us like her grandkids. And then on my dad's side, his mother was somehow she had some Indian in her, and my dad was so proud of that he could brag that he was a little Indian.
Mama, tell us about when Granny brought y'all, or Papa brought you and Granny home from Arlington.
Well, when Mom was going to have a baby, we always went to our grandmother's house, and we had a certain doctor named Dr. Johnson, and he was always our family doctor, and he always delivered the children. So my family doctor was Dr. Johnson from Arlington. He's been dead a long time, but I still think of him. And the day that Mother got sick and she had to go to have the baby, it was real muddy. It had been raining and everything. And when they got in the buggy, back then we had a buggy and a mare, a gray mare that was named Mabel. And Daddy took Mother to my grandmother's house in Arlington to have the baby, and that was me. When they started down the lane, they couldn't hardly get through. The mud was up to the hubcaps of the buggy. But they made it to Granny's, and then I was born. And that was 91 years ago, almost 92. But anyway, it was a story I always heard about him taking her to have the baby. And then when they brought me home, my sister that was 7 years older than me, she wanted to take me and throw me in the creek. There's a big ditch down here, and she used to say to put me in the baby buggy, and she'd roll me off down in the creek, because she didn't love me. She didn't like me at all. In fact, she was older than me. She tried to run over me. You know, she tried to make me do things she wanted me to do, and I wouldn't do it.
Mama, tell about this old Stagecoach Road. Explain that the stagecoach come by.
Oh, yeah. It was back a long time ago. It was a stagecoach road through here, and it come right down behind my house. That was before the house was built, of course. And it was a stagecoach cabin back over in about 3 miles from here. And after the stagecoach quits running through here, some people bought that farm back there, and that's where they tried to make a living. And they were nice people, just country people. And we were friends with all of them.
Mom, would you tell us a little bit about when you and Daddy went to the Halloween party?
Oh, well, when I was going to school, the school bus would run out here for about 4 years. We walked to school from here to Morton's Gap. And then when the school bus started, then it was a minister at Morton's Gap. And he would run the school bus out here to get us to take us to Sunday school and church on Sunday. And at school, well, we just didn't have much of a school. It was just, I started out as a 2-room school at Barnsley. And I was in the 4th grade when I got out of Barnsley School and went to Morton's Gap High School, and I was in the 5th grade. And that's when I met my husband. He was out in the front yard at the school playing marbles, and my friend, she called him over there and she said, "I want you to meet my boyfriend. This is Margie Durham." And he was so cute, but it was her boyfriend, so I didn't say nothing to him much. I was bashful anyway. But then later on, he saved me a seat on the school bus. And that was the end of him and her. Because we were so much alike, I guess, that we really liked each other. And I knowed him for 10 years before we ever married. But we stayed married over 50 years. But in that time, he was a very hard-working person, a good-loving person.
Mom,
He was good to the children, especially the kids, because we only had 2 girls. And he was special to them, I think.
Mama, tell them about the green velvet dress and the homemade candy in your pocketbook.
Well, Darcy and I went to the same school in Morton's Gap, and one night they were having a Halloween party at the school. It cost a dime to go in. If you didn't have a dime, you got to go in free. But anyway, we had a good time when we went. But we had to go dressed like Halloween stuff. And Mom had a big old green satin dress, green velvet dress, and it had a great big bow on it on the side, and it had pearls around it. And I thought it was beautiful. And she told me I could wear it for the Halloween stuff. So I dressed up in this Halloween stuff, and my sister, she made some candy for me to take because we didn't have money to buy candy. And so she made some, what they call molasses candy. It was made out of sorghum molasses, and she put peanuts in there because we had peanuts and nuts here at home. And when we got down on the bridge, it was somebody there dressed up as an old woman, and nobody knew who it was. And come to find out, it was one of the neighbors. He had dressed up in his wife's clothes, and he would tease us, but we didn't know who he was. We thought it was a woman, but it was a man dressed up in women's clothes. And I had this bag of candy that Edith had fixed, and I put it in my purse. I had an old purse I was carrying. And Doris wanted to see what I had in my purse, and I didn't want him to see the candy, so I took it out and threw it away. And then when we got to the school, he had a nickel, and he bought a bar of candy and divided for me. But that was good days.
Yes, that was good days, Mama.
Okay. Tell a little bit about what Granny and Papa did on a daily basis. how they went about working and tell how
Well,
what Granny's job was.
we had a
and
working farm. The farm was right here, and we had a working farm. Everybody had a job, and we had 2 mules that did the work in the fields, did the plowing and cutting the grass and stuff, and the plow was just something you stick in the ground, and 2 mules drug it around to make the ground loose enough to plant. And when we were small, we went around and planted the corn, dropped the seed by hand, and they made little squares like, and you drop the seed in the squares. And I did that a lot of time, and we also had to put the fertilizer in with it, which was cow manure and horse manure that had dried, and that made the fertilizer for the crops.
Well, and about how many field hands did y'all have?
Well, we had a man named Craig, and he did the hard work, and sometimes he would have a tobacco crop, and he'd want me to carry the water and drop the plants, and he'd go behind me and put the plants in the ground, and I'd water them. And I made about a quarter doing that. All day long I'd work.
For a quarter. Tell about Mr. Craig, Mrs. Craig.
Sometimes Mr. Craig wasn't married, so he had a house up here that we let him live in because he's working for us. And when the kids come up here to play, well, we'd go outside with them, and we'd go up to Mr. Craig's house, because he never locked the doors. Back then, you didn't lock the doors. And we'd go in his house, and of course he didn't know how to clean house, so we'd clean his house and scrub his floors and make his bed and clean his clothes and everything. And when he'd come back, and we'd even fix his lunch, fix what we knowed how to cook. We'd fix some stuff for him to eat when he'd come in. And when he'd come in, he'd be so tickled over what we'd done. He said, "Well, I see Mrs. Craig's been here." And that tickled us, because we'd hide when we saw him coming. We'd get in the closet so he wouldn't know was there.
Would he give you a nickel or a dime or something?
Well, when I worked for him, and I'd wash his clothes, and he'd always give me a quarter if I washed his clothes. But it was hard, but it was good times. I look back now and think how wonderful.
And the house was, where was the house that he was in, Mom? Where he lived?
Where you built your house.
Well, when did straw start?
Hmm?
When did straw holders start here?
Well, I don't know what. Daddy always hired somebody to help on the farm, so I don't know what time. But anyway, he was a good worker, and that's why we were good to him. And we had a colored man that come from Barnsley to farm too, and he was so nice. And my mom and dad, they treated him just like one of us. He'd say, "Oh, I don't want to eat at your table," and they'd say, "Yes, you're going to eat in here with us." And they'd always have him to eat dinner with us.
Is that the one the accident was with?
His name was Yarber. All I know is Yarber. But anyway, he was nice, black guy.
I mean, the accident with Papa. Tell about that, Mom.
What now?
About Papa accidentally shooting one of
Oh,
the neighbors.
that happened. My dad always hunted. He would hunt squirrels in the summertime when you could have squirrels, and we would eat that. And in the wintertime, we had hogs that he would kill, and he never killed less than 4 or 5 hogs because it's a big family. And he knowed how to cure the meat and everything, so we'd have meat up till spring, maybe longer than that. But he always helped people that come around that was in need. He would always give them stuff, even out of the garden. People come, they always went home with stuff. my mom and dad was wonderful people. But growing up, you don't realize that. But then later on, you look back and you say, how did they do everything they did?
Yeah, really.
My mom canned all summer long. She canned. And we'd go out and pick blackberries in the spring. And she canned those blackberries and make jam. And we had some cherry trees. And I enjoyed getting up in that cherry tree and picking them cherries because I could eat them as I picked them. And they were so sweet and good. And we had all kinds of fruit trees. We had apple trees and we had nut trees. But it was an orchard between my house and up there where Nathan built. It was an orchard there, and it was such good apples. And in the fall, it was one tree that we would gather the apples off of and wrap them in newspapers and put them in the closet where it was cool. And we'd have apples all winter. And we'd pick up the nuts around here, and we had the hickory nuts and the walnuts. And then they would raise peanuts, which was a little vine. You could pull them up in the fall and have the little nuts on the vine, and we'd pick them off and let them dry, and they were really good in the winter. I still like peanuts.
What was some of the things that y'all always planted in the garden? What was the normal?
Well, every kind of vegetable you can think of, just about. If they got the seed, they would plant them. They never planted plants because you couldn't buy them. They had a plant bed in the spring. They would make a big plant bed, and they'd burn it off to keep the grass and weeds from getting in it. And they'd put rich dirt in there and dig it up and all, and then they'd plant their seed. And they always raised their own tomato plants and sweet potato plants and all the little plants that you could raise on a bed. And we always had lettuce, which I love lettuce till this day. And we always had lettuce, and it's those big bunches of, looked like a head of lettuce, a big head. And it was a head of lettuce. And we'd go up there and we'd pick that lettuce up in the spring. And Mom would fix a salad out of it. And you can't find a salad like that anymore. But it was really good. She knowed how to cook. She knowed how to fix everything. Even wild things like a groundhog or a possum. Now, people won't eat possum, but I'll tell you one thing. The way she cooked it, it smells so good, but I wouldn't eat it because Mama wouldn't eat it. But it smelled good. But Daddy loved it, and he would eat it, and my brothers and sisters eat it. I just didn't. I was like my mama. I was a little bit picky. Oh, she wasn't picky like I was. I was worse. But she wouldn't eat certain things.
Well, what were some of the things that, I know one time you told me of all the stuff that was planted over there in the field where I'm at.
It was a orchard over there. It was an orchard, and it had all kinds of peaches, and we had plum trees, peaches, and grapes. All of them was over there on that lane. And then in the back, they always had their fall garden over there in the back where they said it was new ground, and that was the garden spot, there and one here too at the house. In the spring, they planted this one in the fall, or for fall stuff, they planted that one, come in the fall. But my dad knew just how to plant everything. And he loved little green peas, and I never will forget. They came up early, and they were just a little springy-looking vine. It didn't look like much of nothing stuck on a stick, and had those peas hanging off. And when my mother would cook those peas, it wouldn't be a drop left after we got them eaten. We loved them.
Was there always that old house sitting on my property, Mom?
Oh, right here. Oh.
No, where I live, was that little house where Craig and them lived. Was it always there? Was it there when?
It was. It was the house that the sharecroppers lived in.
The sharecroppers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And later on, when my brother, when he got old enough, he plowed he would plow the ground with a horse and a mule and a plow. And so I don't know how they ever did it, but they always had a good crop of because they had to have stuff for the mules and horse and the cow. Always had a cow for the milk and the butter. Yes, my mom and dad were really hard-working people, and they lived in Arlington, and they would buy a house, and Mother knowed exactly how to clean it up and fix it up where it would sell. And it was like these houses now they build and sell, only it was in a smaller scale. And she said sometimes they wouldn't live in a house but a week, and it would be sold, and they'd have to move, and she'd get another house and redo it, sell it, after they get it. And that's how they saved money. Daddy worked on the railroad and also a coal miner when they lived in town, and he got tired of that, so he said he wanted to farm. So they saved their money, and they bought the farm, and they couldn't wait to get out here, so they would come out here and spend the night, just to, they knew the people, and so they would spend the night here, and then when the people could move, they moved out. My mom and dad moved in, and it must have been a happy time for them, because I remember them talking about how wonderful it was when they moved in here. And I wish I could have been with them.
You were talking too, there was the coal house when we first moved out here. There was the coal house, and then there was 2 outhouses, right?
Yes.
I remember both of the outhouses.
Well, we had a hen house that
Yeah.
Dad had made special for Mama because she liked chickens.
Yeah.
And chickens was part of our diet, too. So she would raise the chickens from a little baby chicken. She knowed how to set the eggs and raise the little baby chickens. And then when they got big enough, we always had chicken to eat.
And I have to say that I was really impressed with the outhouses when we got out here. Well, growing up, when we'd come and visit Granny, when you had to go, you had to go.
Yeah.
And that was really odd for us, but anyway.
Yeah, I like the little tissues that was stuck in the cracks. If you were lucky, you would get a piece.
I didn't know that was happening. But if I had all the nails that had been nailed in this house, I'd be rich.
Yeah, for real. Now, I was going to ask you too, I remember you telling about you would wash clothes over there in the field next to me in that well. Y'all, is that where you went to wash?
No.
Where was it at?
When the water here at the house get low, they'd have to go down there to wash their clothes unless we had some rain. If we didn't have any rainwater at the barrels, we had 3 barrels at the porches where we caught rainwater to wash dishes and stuff. And they'd wash clothes too out of it. But when the water up here got scarce, we took our clothes down below the hill, over there by that well where y'all want to fill up and I won't let you. Well, that's where the water came from. It was that well never went dry. It was a stream coming there all the time. And we'd go down there and wash our clothes and bring them up here to dry on the clotheslines. We had to hang them on the lines to dry. And with a big family, it was always a lot of clothes. And we learned to iron early because we had to iron, and the irons, you heated them on the cooking stove, coal stove. And I've spent many a Saturday washing and ironing my clothes so I could go to school the next week.
How many outfits did you have?
I had about 2 good outfits to wear to school and then play clothes around the house. But we didn't wear our good clothes to play in. We had old clothes that we wore. And I remember I had a pair of old coveralls like the boys wore. And I thought they were so great. I loved them.
Yeah.
And I think when the little boys were little, we bought them some little coveralls.
Oh, I remember a story that I hate being cold. And you tell about sleeping and putting a glass of water under your bed.
Oh, yeah, I slept right here in this room. It was 2 beds in here. And my bed was over in that corner, and my sister's bed was in this corner. And we had a fireplace, and we put coal in it and wood and coal to burn. And at night, they had to bank the fire down, and it would get cold in here. And I'd get me a glass of water so I wouldn't have to get up and go to the kitchen to get a drink. And I'd put it under my bed, and in the mornings, it would usually be froze. It was cold in here. You had to sit right up here at the hearth to stay warm. I've still got my shovel and my poker that I think the world of. I've got every antique I can get, and somebody got my tub that I was so wanted to keep. It had a lot of memories for me, but somebody wanted it worse, so they took it, and I don't know who got it. And then I lost some more stuff, but if you set it out in the outbuilding, I think they think you don't need it or don't want it, and they just take it. But
Well, tell about hog killing day in the big kettle. I like
Okay.
hearing that.
On hog killing day, it was like Christmas Day. At 4 o'clock in the morning, they had to get the water hot for the hogs to be put in to scrape off the hair. So they got up and they put a fire under the water. They always had a big kettle, a great big iron pot. It wasn't a kettle, it was a big pot. And they had that full of hot water, and then they had a man to come over here and kill the hogs, because Daddy didn't want to kill them because he was partial to them, but like Doris was for his little hogs and stuff. And they would kill them, and then they put them in this hot water for a little while and take them out, put them on this big long thing they had fixed, and the men would scrape all them hairs off. And while they were doing that, the women were in the kitchen cooking. Usually my mama was a cook, but others would come and help her too. But they never brought anything because they know there'd be plenty of food here. And we all enjoyed it because the kids came with the parents. On hog killing day, it was like Christmas. And we'd get in here and we'd play all kind of games. And then when dinner time come, we always had 2 or 3 tables full of people eating. But we didn't care, we had a good time. And when they got ready to go home, the man that killed the hogs, he had a family. And Daddy always gave him a lot of meat for killing the hogs. And if anybody else come and done anything or just come to visit, they got some meat. And we had plenty of company. We had people that came from Arlington and would just come and spend a week. And my dad got to where he called this house the hotel, Whitsmith's Hotel. Because they'd come and stay so long, and then when they'd leave, he'd always give them stuff, whatever we had. If they didn't have nothing, they had something, they went home.
Tell them what Papa said about those people that come all the time and clean up the garden.
Well, it was family from Arlington that lived next door to his mother. And they knew where to go on the weekend. They had a car, and here they'd come. Get here before breakfast time, so they have breakfast with us. Stay and eat lunch. Stay and eat supper. And sometimes spend the night. So that happened for a long time. Finally, one day, they'd always say, "Y'all go home with us," when they get up to leave. So Daddy said, when they say, "Y'all go home with us," said, "Now, Janie, I want you to say, 'All right, we're going home with you.'" So Mom said, "Okay." So when they got ready to go home, they said, "Y'all go home with us." Mama said, "I think we will." So she took me, my mom, and the kids, and Dad stayed here to take care of the house. Well, the car was so full that my brother and his friend was hanging on the fender, and we got to that hill down there. It's called the Stemmon Hill. The car wouldn't go up the hill. We had to get up and push it over the hill. So we got it over the hill. We got in. We went to their house. And, of course, my grandmother lived next door. So Mama went over there to stay with Grandma. But The
Is that-
kids stayed all night with Marie. She was
that-
younger.
Was that a house across from the First Baptist Church now? Is that where
Mm-mm,
Marie
no.
lived then? No.
I've showed you where Granny lived.
Oh, okay. So they were going to Granny's house?
They
we
live
would-
next door to.
Oh, next
Mama
door,
would Mama
next door.
would go to Granny's, and we'd stay there with Marie and James and have a good time.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I guess they got kind of tired of that, so we didn't make but one trip. They didn't come back for a while.
Well, didn't you have almost a bad incident down here at the creek?
Well, not down here. It was way back there in the where we shouldn't have been in the first place.
Was it back there in that holler area?
Yeah, back
the
there.
hall?
It's way back there. It was a big place. I don't know how come it there, but it was a big hole. And we decided we'd use it as a swimming pool. So we went back there one Sunday, and it was some boys back there too. And one of the little boys was a lot smaller than me, and he could swim. And he jumped in there and was swimming. And I said, well, I can do that. When I jumped in, I had never swimmed or tried. I went under. Well, I got out. They didn't know how to help me out. If I'd have drowned, they wouldn't know what to have done. But I managed to get out. And that made me scared of water. Well, I like to be in the water, but I want it where I can reach the bottom.
Well, and earlier today you had told me that when y'all did the hog killing, that y'all would actually get in the big kettle after the hogs.
Oh, yeah, in the spring, after they would use all the hot water while they was killing the hogs. And then the rain in the spring would fill up the big old kettle, and we'd get in there when it was hot. The weather'd be hot, and we'd get in there like we swimming.
So you kind of
Playing.
had your own spa.
Yeah,
How many kids could get in that kettle?
all about 4 or 5.
Good Lord.
They're as big as that swimming pool we bought for y'all.
Oh my God.
Bigger than that.
How
deeper
old's
than
this
that.
house, Nanny, how old's the house? How old's
the
old
house?
Is this house?
How was it?
How old?
How old is this house? It's over 100 years
It
old.
was built in 1886.
Whoa.
And this is where I was raised. And it was, kids loved to come and stay all day with us because they got to eat dinner with us, and we'd play Annie over. This is a big house to throw a ball over, but we'd do that. We'd play the Annie over, and we had horseshoes, and then they made us 2 flying jennies out here that was homemade. My brother and my sister made them. They would put a big post in the hole, fix it in the hole where it wouldn't, I guess, put rocks around it or whatever. And then they would put a big plank over it, that great big and wide plank over it, and put a screw in there and screw it on there. And it's a flying jenny. They called it a flying jenny. And we had one for the big people and one for the little kids. We had 2.
Tell about getting on top of the roof. And
Oh,
jumping
yes. You know, we wasn't supposed to get out on the porch top, but it was flat. We'd get out there and put Mama's apples out there to dry when they were drying apples. They'd peel the apples and cut them up, and we'd put them on the roof. So it was a tree that was close to the house, and it hung over the roof. One of the tree limbs did. It was close enough we could reach out and get it. So one day I thought, well, wasn't nothing to do. I'd go up there on the roof, and I got up there, and I decided I'd take a jump. So I reached over and got the limb, and I come off of the house, and who was watching me? My dad was coming up the driveway, and I knowed what I would get if he knowed who I was. So I jumped off, and I run around the house.
And he was
And
mad
come
because
in.
you had on shorts, too.
I come in the house.
Uh-huh.
And when my daddy come in, he said, Janie, I saw an awful sight today. And she said, what in the world? He said it was something. Jumped out of that tree. She said, well, what was it? He said, I couldn't see. They whatever it was, run around the house. I never said it was me either.
That's funny.
Well, Mama, with it being Christmas, tell about some of the Christmases out here that you can remember.
Oh, the Christmases were so good. We always had Christmas people, too. We always had people to come on Christmas. But one year I remember special. I was small. I hadn't got big enough to go out and get my tree yet. 'Cause when we did, it was 4 or 5 of us went. We would go over here and we asked Mr. Allen if we could get a tree off his place. And he'd say yes, and we'd go out there and we'd pick the very biggest tree we could find and drag it home. Sometimes it'd be so big we'd have to cut it off at the bottom because it wouldn't go in. And we always set it there in that corner. But this year, I don't for know what reason, they set it over here by my bed. And they decorated, sitting right there in the floor. And they put green and red stuff that went around it, and they didn't have any icicles at the time. We didn't have any. And they put on what they had, old stuff, but it didn't suit me. We'd string popcorn, put popcorn on the tree, and red berries and stuff. So that year, the tree looks pretty good until my oldest sister got this big red bell and she strung it out, and that thing was that big to me. I thought it was that big, probably wasn't. But she hung it right in the middle of the tree, and here come the tree over. Well, that didn't suit me, and I cried. And I cried. I went to bed crying. So the next morning when I woke up, Santa Claus had been here. The tree was completely different. All the old stuff was gone. All new decorations was on it. And icicles. As the first icicles I ever saw. And it was so pretty. And the firelight was making them just sparkle. And I thought it was the prettiest tree I ever saw. And that was one of my favorite Christmases. Another time when I was small, I can barely remember it, but I remember we had a small tree. That was before we started getting the big trees in. And we had a small tree, and it was sitting there in front of that window. And Santa Claus come, but I didn't get a doll. We got candy and oranges and apples, but I didn't get a doll. And I was wanting a doll. That's what I wanted, was a doll. So Mama said, well, did you look on the tree? And I said, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find no doll. She said, you go back and you get and look up in the tree. When I went and looked up in the tree, there was a pretty doll. And what I didn't know, it was the same doll I had. But my mom had made all new clothes and put on it. And it was so beautiful. And I loved that doll, and I kept it until I was grown. And when my sister's kids come out here, they tore up my stuff. My doll was in there.
Mabel's kids?
No, it was Edith's boys.
Edith's boys?
But I never said nothing because they were old dolls. And I had a lot of dolls, so from then on I always had a doll.
Tell about the night you was sleeping over here in the corner and the man came in.
Oh my, back then people never locked their doors. And my mom and dad had gone to a neighbor's house to spend the night. And while they were gone, my brother-in-law and my uncle slept upstairs. They had a bedroom up there. And so Mama felt safe in leaving us with them because it was me and Mabel and Margie, Louise, and Jean, and we all slept here in the same room. So it was hot that night, and we went to bed, and Margie and Jean fixed them a pallet at the foot of our bed so they'd get the air and come in. So during the night, I felt something, and when I screamed, I screamed because I didn't know what it was. And it was somebody. and they were in a white shirt, and they were leaning over me, and it scared me to death. And when I screamed, Mabel screamed also. And, of course, my brother-in-law and them, they came running down. My uncle came running down to see what was wrong. And I told him. And as I was telling him what happened, we heard the back screen door close. And so it was somebody, and they run off the back porch. And my uncle and my brother-in-law went outside to see if there's anybody around the house, and they saw a car pulling off down here below the road. So they knew it was somebody. And I always thought I knew who it was because my mom and dad had to pass their house going to where they was going to spend the night, and they know they was going to spend the night somewhere. And so I don't know if they meant to scare us or what, but they sure did a good job at it.
Well, speaking of being scared, what about, can you tell any about the haunted house that you and Dad lived in?
Well, when we first married, we lived in a little trailer that was made out of a bus, an old school bus, and we bought it for $100. And his aunt and uncle, they let us move the little house trailer on them. Nobody else in the family would let us move it. A lot of people had ground, but no, they didn't want nothing like that on their ground. Well, they said, well, yes, you can move it on us. And, of course, we helped them, too. And we moved the little trailer on the bus, and then I told Doris, I said, Carol came along, it wasn't no room for her to play, so I said, we're going to have a house to move into. So we started looking for a house, and we found one for rent that was down on the Richland Road. And we didn't have any furniture because we lived in that little bus. And the table we had in there was about that big that we ate off of. And our plates and stuff came from the 10-cent store. We had 2 plates and 2 glasses and some spoons and knives and forks. And I still have the big pot and the skillet that we had to cook in. And so I told Doris, I said, well, we're going to have a house. I said, she don't have any place to play. So we rented this house on Richland Road. And we went to the company store and we bought us some furniture to put in it. And the people that took the furniture down there, I heard the man and 2 men, and they were talking. And one of them said, the other one said, I wouldn't live here if it would give me this house free. I wouldn't live here. I still didn't know what they was talking about. So that night, when we went to bed that night, everything seemed perfect. I mean, but you didn't lock the doors. You had no key. So during the night, we heard something walking. It wasn't even dark. I had laid down with Carol to get her to sleep, and then Doris had gone to bed because he had to work that night. And so when he got up, he said, now, I don't want to leave you down here, you and Carol, by yourself. And I'll just take you up to my brother's house and you spend the night. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I can spend the night here. I felt comfortable. I had never, thought nothing about it. Well, that night when Doris was asleep, well, I heard something. It sounded like somebody took a stick and just raked it down the side of the house. Well, that scared me. I went in there and I just jumped on top of it. I said, somebody's around this house. I said, they sound like they took a stick and raked it down the house. He said, oh, you just imagine that. I said, no, I didn't. He said, well, we'll listen again. So we sitting in our table and we was talking. And I was getting him ready to go to his job. And it sounded like somebody was pecking on the screen. And he heard it too. He jumped up and he run around the house. He didn't see a thing. He said, well, I'm not going to leave you here. I said, well, he had got a key to lock the door. He said, don't want nobody to come in because the door's locked. But the screens were not very good on the windows either. And I said, well, I'll just stay here. And I went to bed. I had the pistol over here where I could get it if I had to. And Carol was laying there by me asleep. And after he left, the racket began. And I heard all kinds of rackets. And I sat up there in the bed all night with that gun. And I thought, if anybody comes in, I'll kill them. Well, I didn't want to be killed and have my baby hurt. So Doris, he went on to the mines. He come back the next day. He said, well, how'd the night go? And I said, I haven't slept a wink. I said, we're going to have to move. I can't stand it down here. He said, what happened? I said, well, I heard racket all night, like something in the attic. And I said, I don't know what it was. He said, well, and we come out here, and I was telling my mom and dad about it. My brother, he said he was brave, he was going to be brave and show me up. So he said, I'll go home and spend the week with you. Okay. Well, he went home with us that night, and we sitting there talking, and we heard that scraping down the side of the wall again. Just, oh, it was loud. And I looked at him, and I said, did you hear that? He said, oh, that was just a limb hitting the side of your house. I said, there's no tree there. How could it be a limb? There's no tree there. Well, he said, if it happens again, Doris was sitting there, he done got up. He said, if it happens again, you run out the run door and I'll go out the next, and we'll catch whoever that is. Doris said, okay. So Doris had the pistol, and they went out, one on each side of the house. Went all the way around it, didn't see anything. Well, all of us was upset. Doris was even scared, and he had a pistol. But he wouldn't have stayed there by himself, I tell you. And so my brother didn't spend the week with me either. He spent one night. That's all he stayed. So then my dad, he said, well, if you're scared to stay there, we'll find a house for you. And he knew a friend that had a house for sale, and it was closed. So we went and looked at it, and my husband didn't have any money. We didn't have no money. So Daddy said, well, I'll loan you the money to buy the house. And so we borrowed $100 from him. That's what the house and 2 acres of ground cost, was $100. And we bought that little house. It was just a 4-room house, but to me it was like a mansion.
Wasn't it 1,000, Mama? Was it 1,000? You said 100.
No, it's $100.
Just $100 for that
I
house?
think it was $100.
I think you told us 1,000.
Maybe it was 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bound to be with the ground, but I can't remember all
That's
of
all
it.
right.
But anyway, we bought the house, and I had my brother-in-law. He came and fixed me some steps and underpinned it and fixed it so we could have a stove in there and be warm.
Who was that? Who did
Gabe.
Gabe?
And he made me 2 closets. We didn't have no closets in the house, and he fixed me 2 closets. And he stayed with us until he got all of it done. We paid him, for his work and everything. And then we stayed there, and I had taken a beauty school course to be a beauty operator. And I wanted to work out, but my husband didn't want me to work out, and he told me, said, if you'll just wait, I'll buy you a shop and you can have it in your house. And I said, well, that would be really, really nice. So we found a shop and some stuff that was for sale, and he hired a man to go and get it, and he put it up in my house. I had a little beauty shop in my house, and it was doing pretty good. So then I decided I wanted a bigger house where I'd have more business. And I seen this house in Arlington that was for sale, and it was right close to where one of my sisters lived. And I went up to her house, and I was telling her, I said, that house down there's for sale, and I think I'm going to buy it. She said, you couldn't buy that house for love or money. I said, well, it won't hurt to ask. So before I could ask, the woman died. She fell off of where you go across the railroad bridge thing. She fell off, and she was old anyway, and she died. So the house then was really for sale. They wanted to get rid of it. And it was 2 or 3 that was into it that owned it. So we talked to the people that owned it, and they had put it in a person's house that sold houses. And I called the man, and I told him that we was interested in it. Could we go in and look? And he said yes. So he brought the kid. We went in and looked, and I fell in love with that house. I know it's ridiculous, but it was like something out of a magazine. But it hadn't been kept up. It was run down. And it didn't have a bathroom. It didn't have water in it. No electricity. We had to do all that, have all that put in.
Do we need to cut?
You can still keep rolling. I'm just sorry. I lost the battery.
But it was so good to have a house. And I had a good shop. I had 2 doors to the front. My husband, he first seen it, he said, oh, it's too much work. I couldn't do all that work. I said, well, I want it. He said, well, we'll buy it, and I'll fix it. So we bought it and fixed it up, and it looked like a new house when we got it done.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. And we lived there for several years. And my shop did good. And I was all booked. And we bought the farm about 2 years before I was ready to close my shop. In fact, I didn't want to close it. I was aiming to move it out here, but I didn't have no place to put it out here, so I had to just close it. But anyway, we moved out here, and I never regretted. The first day we come home that night, I was sick with a cold, and when we moved our beds in the house and we got ready to go to bed, I thought to myself, I'm actually home. And I thought, I don't never want to leave it. And as long as I can, I want to stay in my house. Because this is home for me.
You will.
I have so many memories here. And sometimes when I'm just working or doing something, something funny will hit me that happened. And I'll just laugh. I can't help it. But it was so many funny things that happened with a big family. My old sister that was older than me that never did like me, or I didn't think she liked me, of course she did, but she would jump on me for nothing, for no reason, and try to hit me and hurt me. And one time we was having hog killing day, and we was in here and something come up about the bed. We had to make the bed up or something. And I don't know what I said now, but anyway, she was aiming to hurt me. And my uncle said, you just pick up that poker there and knock her in the head. Believe me, I picked up the poker and I hit her. And that's when the war started. She got me down and she was fixing to kill me. And Mama come in here and made her get off of me.
Was that
Hold the bell. She was mean.
Well, speaking of the houses and all, tell about what you and Daddy had to do to get this house fixed up to where we could move out here.
Oh, we had a carpenter to come out here and put in the closets so we could have a place to put our clothes. And we got a bathroom put in gradually. But before we ever moved out here, Doris put in all the gas. He dug a well from over there at the gas well, cleared the house, and put the gas in for Mom and them. Bought the heater, put the heaters in. Put a heater in here and one in the kitchen. And then he put in water. They didn't have running water. He put in running water. And we just worked day and night. He'd work nights and come in on days and still work. He fixed for the barn up. He put doors on the barn. Fixed it up where he could have hogs and some cows.
And he dug that line from the pond all the way here
All the
by
way
himself.
to have water.
And also, I remember y'all having all those old rusty junk cars that used to sit in the front of the house. Y'all had those all towed off, And then I remember when you and Daddy got out and went all over the farm and picked up the garbage.
He did and I did.
You did all that, didn't you?
I even went on the floor and got everything out from on the floor. And I went around the road. People had just used it as a dump place. And they just throwed out stuff. And I went around the road. I had a big truckload of stuff
Good gracious, Mom.
Trash.
that I picked up.
Well, and then it wasn't long after we got out here, the first spring that we got here, Daddy bought all of us a fly swat, and me and you and Carol and Daddy would sit on the front porch at night or in the afternoon. It wasn't at night, but it was in the afternoons, and we would swat flies until we
Yeah.
had all of that taken care of.
That's right. But he put out fly stuff
Yeah.
too up there at the
He put the
barn.
fly ribbons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, he bought stuff you could spray where hogs were.
Mama, tell about when Daddy was at the barn and the wasp got after him.
Well, he said he was gonna feed the cows, and it was a big wasp nest up in the ceiling, and he said they say if you don't bother the wasp, they won't bother you. He said that's not true. So he was shoveling corn, and I guess it stirred them up. So they were aimed to get him. So when they started coming after him, he said he grabbed, what was it he had?
He said he thought to himself, he said, what would John Wayne do?
Yeah.
So he said he grabbed that sprayer, and he said he rolled on the ground and come up shooting, and he said, I got every one of them.
I think his exact words was, I opened the door, I dove in, I rolled up and come up shooting and killed them all.
Got every one of them.
He
That
was
was
funny.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's over, or do you have another one you want me to tell?
Well, we've got a zillion more, but we'll just try to hit what we can. Do you remember the day that Daddy went in the pond after Skippy?
Yeah, it was cold.
It was ice, and the dog got on the pond and went through.
Yeah, that was Skippy.
Yeah.
And he said he didn't even think. He just jumped in there and got him because he seen he's drowned.
Yeah.
Most dogs can swim, but it was cold. He
It was
couldn't
ice.
swim.
Well, there was too much ice, and he told me when he came to the door, he was soaked all the way, and he had that dog in his hand, in his arms, and we went to the kitchen to get up against the stove.
Well, I remember something.
And he said, when he went down, I said, Skippy, I'm not going to let you go. And he went in after him.
Okay. I remember when me and Linda was laying in the bed in Arlington, and I heard something going, psst, 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 and I woke up. Daddy was standing on the floor heater where he almost froze to death when he was walking from the coal mines. And they had made him take a detour for some reason. And it was so bad and so blizzardy outside that he couldn't see, and he hit a ditch. And he walked all the way home from Madisonville. And he
No,
like
it was
froze to
right
death.
there as you turned to come into Arlington.
Come into Arlington.
Oh, that's a few miles.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
near
Was it
close.
Barnsley? Was it on Wilson Street he walked down that way?
No. You know that shortcut when you turn off up there at the top of the hill? It was a,
Yeah, like you go back by Highland.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that's where he
That's a
got
couple
off the
miles.
ditch.
And so he had a, well, that's what else.
Yeah.
But that wasn't Madisonville. It was close. It was
It was right after you hit Madison. You were hitting Arlington, but he had to walk home. Yeah. And that was probably a couple miles, or a mile.
I imagine it was.
Yeah.
And it was slick too. So he probably took him a while to walk home. But we had some bad times. We had good times.
Well, one of the funny times that I remember out here was when Daddy was upstairs snoring so big, and I called the American Legion, and I let Ralph, our the famous Ralph from the American Legion listened to Daddy snore, and he said, "Honey, are you dying?" And I just laughed because he didn't know who it was.
This is how Papa sounded. He would go.
He couldn't get his breath.
I didn't know he had sleep apnea. They didn't even know what that was.
That was from the coal mines.
Well,
He had that
black lung.
Black lung, and
Yeah.
then that causes sleep apnea because he couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we thought it was hilarious because Ralph got all upset about it.
Yeah, and then Mama come up there because I had you laughing, and Mama come up there and said, "What are y'all doing?" And then I showed her. I'd put the phone up to Daddy, and he'd do that big snore, and Mama sat on the steps out there and laughed till she cried because Ralph was saying things like, "Are you all right?" and all that kind of
Where you
stuff.
live at, baby? I'll come get you
Yeah.
right now. I'll call the ambulance.
And so we laughed and laughed about that. We never did tell Daddy that. He would have been mad about that. Another time when we lived at Arlington, I called the American Legion because Daddy should have been home having supper with us. And I thought, well, I'll just call down there. So I called and I said, "It's a raid! It's a raid!" And I hung up. So when Daddy got home, he walked up to me and he got about 2 inches from my face. And he said, "You better not have called the hall." And I said, "I don't know, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Did you call the hall?" I said, "No. If I find out you called down there and said it was going to be a raid, I'm going to wear you out."
And I was so supportive. I said, "She did that."
Yeah. And then she stood behind Daddy and laughed and made faces and tried to get me in trouble.
I remember when Daddy took the boys up there to the grocery store at Morton's Gap, and when we come in from work, they're sitting in the floor right here, mouth full.
Well, let me tell you how that happened. Me and Mama was at Watson's, and I looked at my watch, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's time for the kids to get off the bus. We're not gonna make it. There's nobody at home." So I called the American Legion, and Daddy was a little happy. And he got on the phone, and I said, "Daddy, we're not gonna make it, and the boys are fixing to get off the bus." He said, "Don't worry about it, baby. I'll go get them. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Okay." So I said, "Mama, we're good. Daddy's going to be taking care of the boys." So he did. And when we got home, he had taken Nathan and Josh up to the IGA, Lovin's IGA here in Morton's Gap, and gave them a shopping cart and told them to get anything they wanted. And he spent $40 on candy and junk.
That would have been $80 now.
Yeah, and when we walked in,
That's a lot.
those two boys were sitting right here, and their cheeks was like that, and they had a sack of all their food, cookies, candy, bananas, they had it. And Daddy's,
Marshmallows.
and I said to Daddy, I said,
Marshmallows are good.
"You shouldn't have done that." And he said, "Well, we had a good time." He was happy he took them and let them do that. Didn't bother him at all. He loved that. And he used to also, speaking of bananas, every day when Katie was a baby, he'd come over and bring her a banana. And he'd laugh because she would eat and it would squish out of her mouth and all that because she was so little. And so it got to where he was bringing her 2 bananas a day. And I said, "She is going to be sick. You've got to quit doing that, Daddy." I said, "1 banana's enough." Okay, 1 banana. But he always came to see her every single day. And another thing that was funny was Katie's first birthday. I had just a little family party, you know, and Daddy had come in, and I had chip and dip on the table in the living room. And Katie had never had any dip. So she stuck her finger in there. Everybody was getting a chip and putting it on their, the dip on it and eating it. So she stuck her finger in it and tasted it. Next thing you know, she was really getting a lot of dip. And Daddy laughed till he couldn't hardly stand it. And I've got that on video. It was so funny. He ate it up because she was really tearing that dip up. Mama, he liked to see kids eat good.
Share with us when Katie wanted to go to the Christmas party, and Papa didn't want her to go.
Yeah.
Well, it was cold night. It was a Christmas party. It was close to Christmas, about a week before Christmas. And she decided, well, not only her, but we all wanted to go. We all went, usually. Even Mama would go with us. But that night it was cold. We wasn't going to get to go. So Katie said she was going anyway. And Daddy said, no, if the others can't go, it's too cold for you too. You don't need to go out in cold. Be sick. I said, no, I won't be sick, and I'm going. And said, John and Cliff's going with me. And Daddy said, no, when I say you can't go, you can't go. So she got her coat on and was fixing to go, and Daddy got the horsewhip. He said, you're not going. And he was aimed to whip her with a horsewhip. Mama said, no, you're not going to hit her. And she got between Daddy and Katie. And he did hit Mama once, but that's all. He couldn't do it. I mean,
He hit Granny?
he hit her, but he wasn't meaning to. He thought he was going to hit Katie.
Oh.
But he didn't. After he hit Mama, I was into that.
But is that when Katie and John left?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they went on to the Christmas party. It was a Christmas show, like, the school puts on a little show, like.
Well, was that why that she left? I mean, the farm? Did she leave the farm then?
Yeah.
And she never came back?
She went to Mary Hannah's mom, was that where
She lived with Granny. Her and John both went to Granny Smith's.
Granny.
And they were afraid to come home, cause trouble. Now, when Katie got married, her and Gabe did come and sat on the porch. But Daddy wasn't here. Or if he's here, he didn't come out. But they come to tell her that they'd got married. And then when they moved off from here and we couldn't go see her, when they'd come back, they would come down here to the corner and send Willaruth or whoever they could get down there to come up here and tell us that they were down there. And we'd go down there and see them. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized it, but he's too stubborn.
To give in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember you telling about when y'all would have dinner that nobody could speak. I mean,
We would want to talk and play and sing and stuff, and he said, no, we come here to eat, and you're going to eat. And we didn't say, what are you having for dinner? Whatever was cooked is what we ate. It was good, really good. And a lot of time Mom would say, now, if you don't eat breakfast, you can't go to school. And I intend to go to school one way or the other. I love school. And I said, well, I'll eat a biscuit and some sausage or whatever it was on the table. I'd eat it and fix it, and I'd get 2 or 3 away where she couldn't see me. I'd throw it away. I didn't want it. We had all kind of meat stuff. I didn't want it.
You want to tell us about Delmonico? Or the day y'all got married?
Yeah. Yeah, I had started a new job, and Doris had got his vacation, so we got married. And we didn't intend to tell anybody, because we didn't want nobody there. But Doris decided he needed a new shirt. I guess his old one was dirty or something, so he went downtown to get his shirt. And while he's downtown, he met his brother and one of his friends, and Betty Brackett, that was one of my friends. So here they all come up to where we was at. And I was ready to go to get married. And we had to go to the courthouse, and we had to take a blood test, and you had to be 21 years old, and I wasn't hardly 21, I was 20. And so Thomas Lee had to sign for me to get married. And when we went to the preachers to get married, it was at the parsonage at the First Baptist Church there in Hopkinsville. And while the minister was getting our vows and everything, well, Doris's friend was back there shaking his head, making faces and stuff. He didn't want Doris to get married because they run around together.
Yeah.
And so,
Trying to
but
be
we
funny.
went ahead and got married anyway.
But did Daddy buy you your outfit for the wedding?
Yes, he did.
So he picked it out?
Yeah.
Or did you pick it out?
Well, I was with him when he bought it. Yeah, I guess I picked it out. I wanted a
Tell
coat.
what it looked like and tell about the place you got married in.
Well, I had on a blue dress and black pumps and a white, off-white coat, long coat. And he had on a nice pair of pants and a jacket, a suit. He bought a suit. And that new shirt that he went to town to buy. And we looked okay.
Did you move straight into Delmonico's?
Yeah, we had a room at Monaco's. And that night we went to a movie. And I don't remember what was on, but we went to the movie.
Was that at the place where there was that little Greek restaurant?
Oh, we would go down there to eat. We didn't have a place to cook. So we'd go down there and eat.
Didn't she save y'all candy?
Oh, yeah. It was during the war, and the candy went to the soldiers, and we hardly ever got any candy. So they would get candy for the restaurant, and they'd save us one of them big chocolate bars about that big. Cost $1.
Pretty good size then.
Yeah.
Tell about your room at Delmonico's.
Well, it was a nice big room, and she had a really nice bedroom suite in there and a fireplace and a big plant. It was a green plant that was by the windows, had 3 or 4 big windows in the front, and that big plant was there. I thought it was so pretty. And then she fixed it where I could cook a little bit. She put us a little table up there and a stove, a little coal oil stove to cook on. And I would make things, and I'd make a banana pudding because that was Doris's favorite. And I'd take it down there to her oven to brown it on top. But
Well, let me ask you this. Tell about living in Evansville when
Oh,
Daddy
then,
was...
well, we went to Evansville, Doris's job, moved him to Evansville, and we moved in one room that his aunt had that was empty. We moved in there, and they were pretty good to us, but the room didn't look so good. It had been lent out to so many people, and the carpet looked so bad that I got down and got some stuff, and I cleaned that linoleum carpet until it looked brand new. And Aunt Essie come in, she said, "Have you bought a new carpet?" I said, "No, I just cleaned that one." First time I guess it ever been cleaned. But Doris would come home to eat, and when they got ready to move out, he said, "I'm not going." So he quit his job, and we come back to Kentucky, and he got a job driving a taxi cab, and I got a job in a beauty shop. And we were doing pretty good until his mother got sick. And one night they came and said, "Doris," they called her Mammy, "Mammy's sick, and you're going to have to go and stay with her." Now, he had his job one day. He had to quit his job and go to the hospital and take care of her. Now, others didn't have, they had been married a long time, and they could have done something too, but they didn't. Everything depended on my husband.
They didn't even have a job, and they just wanted Daddy to do it. I know them.
But anyway, then when she got better and she went home, they said, "Now you're going to have to quit your job and go take care of her." And I had to quit my job. And Doris got a job then at Hopkinsville in the tunnels. They were digging tunnels up there. And he got a job in that place digging tunnels. It was hard.
Mom, do you remember when Christmas would come around and we'd want to go to Madisonville and look at the lights? What happened then?
Well, we liked to go and just look around at the lights and take the kids, buy them a little something to eat or drink. And always, Doris, we'd get in the car and he'd say, well, I've got to go to the bathroom. So he'd go back in the house. He'd take the presents where I had them hid, put them on the tree. And when we'd get in the house, Linda was saying she started screaming from the time she started in there till she got to the tree.
We always had a great Christmas. That was fun. How about when me and you and Daddy and Willie, and it snowed, and we all went sledding?
Oh, yeah, that was fun. We had a big sled, and Carol and Willie came out here. They hadn't been married long, and they wanted to go sleigh riding, so Doris and I went with them. And we got up there, and we come around that big bend flying.
In front of my house.
Yeah.
What'd you do? We started where the barn was, and go down, and then on down.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good ride.
Well, I remember the night that me and Carol and Willie and Rick and the boys rode with Chris Vandiver on the Black Widow up here on the big hill. We had that big icy hill that year.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come down the Black Widow, we hit a hump. And no joking, we were airborne.
Yes.
Every doggone one of us.
It was all on the same sled.
Yeah, and I mean, when we come down, I thought my tailbone was broke. She thought hers was broke.
Knocked the breath out
I
of
mean,
Nathan.
it did all of us. I mean, couldn't walk.
And we would have even known you's up there hurt.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, we were hurt, but we finally, got up. And actually, that was on Rick and I's 7th wedding anniversary.
Was it really?
It absolutely was.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it was, because that was the year that he got me that little tiny gold necklace that I still have, and you picked out for him. And it was so pretty. I still have that. Got it on my sink in the bathroom right now.
That's funny.
But Chris Vandiver was smart. He didn't get on there with us.
No, it wasn't no room.
Oh,
Yeah, it wasn't any room.
he ought to
That
been
was
on the
smart.
front.
We were
He
sitting
better
like
be
this.
glad he did.
Here was Willie in the front, and he had Nathan between his legs, and then my legs, and then Linda's legs, and Ricky's legs. Wasn't no room.
Oh God, it was painful.
We've come off that thing and went,
Yeah,
and every one of us fell
What
over.
was it called now?
the Black Widow.
I can see why they called it the Black
I
Widow.
do too.
I killed everybody.
I should have give you a hint not to get on it.
Yeah. Oh man. Anyhow, we just let's see. Tell about being in labor with Carol and that you didn't go to the hospital.
Well, we had saved money for me to go to the hospital and have the baby. Well, Doris's brother talked him into it just to bring me over to their house and have the baby because we didn't have hardly any money. So I got ready and we went over there to Old Bill and Herbert's house. And they'd put a bed up in the room for us, in their living room. And so while the doctor was an old doctor, and he come and it took me a while to have her, and instead of giving me a shot of something, they just give you a tonic or something made up at home. It was ginger, I think, and water made up.
Ginger and water.
And then I still didn't have any pains. So finally, when I did start having pains, they were pretty hard. So they had some ether, and they put it on cotton or a rag or something, and Old Bill would hold it to my nose when I was having a hard pain, so I didn't suffer so bad. And I had an audience there watching. I call it an audience. His mother, his aunt, I don't know how many was there. But I had a healthy baby, and I was really proud. And when I saw her, I thought she's the cutest thing. She looked like a doll. I always loved my dolls.
Well, and then when Carol got a little bigger, y'all went to Aunt Obel's to wash clothes out in the coal house, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell a little bit about that.
Well, she had a building she washed out in, it had a gas stove, and she could heat her water in a tub and put it in the washing machine. And she said, you can come over and wash with me, and we'll just take a day and wash. I said, okay. She said, now I'll wash my clothes first, and then you can wash yours. I said, okay. So while she was washing her clothes, I'd be in the house, and I would make up the bed and wash up the dishes and cook, fix dinner for them. Well, Doris and Herbert both come home for dinner. So I'd have dinner cooked. And then she wanted me to pay for the washing powders, which she used one of them big boxes of washing powder and a big jug of bleach. Every time we went, had to have that. And I had to furnish it, because I used the same stuff in mine, except for the bleach. I didn't use that. And
Did they have running water out to the?
no,
Did you
drug
change
it out of the
water
well. Herbert would drag it out of the well and then
Drag it out of the well.
and put it in
But
the.
they used clean water out of every tub that was washed.
No, not every time.
Oh my God.
Anyway, we'd get our clothes washed, and I'd help hang them on the line. And sometimes in the wintertime, your fingers would nearly freeze getting them hung on the line. We had a lot of clothes to have to wash on the boards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Sissy got the KU guy was out here on the porch one day, and he walked between the boys, and I mean, she bit him 3 times before he got back in the truck.
She was so protected.
She and I was like,
Yeah,
oh my God, we're
she
gonna
was
be
a
in
good
a
guard
lawsuit.
dog.
She was.
But
She's a
I
good
never
guard
left
dog,
them
but-
out there
Yeah,
with just the dog. I never left them.
yeah.
When I went out there, I stayed with them until I had come in the house for something, and then that's when Nathan broke his arm, and I hated it so bad. But Carol had broke hers too when she was in school.
Well, and I remember when we'd drive up, like from work or something, and you'd have the kids in the swing, you'd have both of them, and they'd be sacked out where you'd be telling them stories, and then they would fall asleep.
Hmm.
And it would be such a nice day outside, and you
Yeah, they
sit
just-
out there and swing with them.
They
till
just play, and I'd feed them their lunch, and then we'd go out there to swing, and I'd tell them stories and sing to them and entertaining them to keep them from getting back in the dirt. And then one of them would go to sleep, and then directly the other would go to sleep, and there I was, too. I'd lay one in the swing, and I'd bring the other in the house and put him on the pallet, and I'd go back and get the other and bring him in, put him on the pallet.
Well, tell about you and Katie on the steps. I like that. 'Cause
Oh, when Katie was little, she liked to play in her little toys, and she was always the waitress. And she'd cook, and she'd bring stuff like she's bringing me food for me to eat. And she always would want to play school. So I'd bring her over here so we could play out here on the steps. And I'd play like the bell was ringing and time to go to school and all that stuff. And we'd get in there, and I would go over stuff with her, just playing. But she took it all in.
Yeah.
She she knew her ABCs and everything before she ever started school.
I didn't teach her any of that. She learned all that out there on the steps.
Yeah.
What's a good story about seeing a mama?
Well, I know that story. You go ahead, Mama.
I will tell about her because it was in July, and Josh and Aphrodite was fixing to get married, and I was supposed to go to California for the wedding. I said, I'm not going anywhere till that baby's born. I want to know if it's boy or girl. I was hoping for a girl.
Mama, and Carol took her over there real late that night, and she said, I couldn't leave. I couldn't get on the plane till I saw the baby. So
And I would
after
see
she
you,
got
and
the
you
baby,
was the cutest baby.
then she
Oh,
was
you
happy.
was a darling little
I
baby.
think it was about midnight when we brought you over and you
Yeah.
got to see her and
Yeah.
we took you back home.
I was born 1 minute before midnight, so yeah, I'd say so. Facts.
Good children.
Oh,
You want to say anything to her?
Wait a minute. You got any questions, Sienna?
Oh,
You sure?
you could tell about that time that she threw all of Al's violin out the window.
Oh, do you want to tell
Or
about?
maybe it was Olabelle who threw Nanny's violin out the window. I
No,
don't remember, but one
it
of
was a
them threw-
guitar. Yeah.
Or a guitar.
Oh,
Do you wanna tell about
yeah, that was a good
Throwing
one.
the guitar out the window.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad never let us play around the table. When we went to the table, we had to sit there and eat. And so that day, my dad was gone. We had a big round table, and we was all sitting around. Mom had cooked a big pot of beans and cornbread, and we were sitting around eating our beans and cornbread. And I was sitting between Olabelle and Mabel, and Olabelle said, "Pass me the black pepper." And Mabel picked it up. And of course, I had to hand it to her. So I handed it to her, and she went to put it in her plate, and the top come off. And she thought I opened it, but I didn't. It was Mabel that opened it. And she went ahead and she put some more beans and stuff in there, and she ate all that pepper. And so when Mabel wanted the pepper again, she said, "Olabelle, pass me the pepper." Well, Olabelle unscrewed the top and handed it to her. And she did the same, and she went to crying. And she wouldn't eat it because it had too much pepper. And she got mad at Olabelle. She went upstairs and got the guitar that Olabelle was trying to learn to play. And she threw it out the window trying to break it. And then Olabelle got mad and she went upstairs and got her paper dolls and tore up her paper dolls.
Oh man.
It was funny.
That's the way little girls are.
Y'all
But
had some good times.
It
Wild
was
times.
my sister. She knew what happened, but she turned it around. She said it was me that opened the pepper box, but it wasn't. It was Olabelle and Mabel. And she knew what it was, but she was telling that story the other day when I was up there to visit her. She said, "I'll tell you this story about Margie Ann. She opened the black pepper and I poured it in my beans and eating beans." I said, "Wait a minute. I'll tell you how it really happened." I said, "I live it every day and know what happened." I told her what happened.
Well,
She forgot.
Olabelle lives in a little.
Hmm.
Well, anyway, I think you had a really good idea. Mama, do you want to say anything or tell the kids just Merry Christmas and give them any kind of advice or any well wishes?
Yes. I would like for all my grandkids to learn a lesson from me, and that is to eat good food. That's what kept me alive. I always managed to have good food. Still today, Linda brought my lunch, which was a hamburger and a milkshake, and it was really good. And I want all my kids to be good and not fool with drugs. Don't ever take drugs or alcohol, because that's what kills people. And just try to live a good Christian life. And the Lord would take care of you. If you take care of Him, He'll take care of you.
Amen.
And Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope you have a real good Christmas this year. I'll be looking for Josh and Aphrodite and the boys to come home, because I haven't seen you in a while and I've been wanting to see you. And I know my little granddaughter will be here because she's here right now with me. And I love to hear her read. She really can read. And she's smart in her school. But what makes me so happy is to see her play the piano and her little horn. Saxophone. That's really good, see, and I hope you keep all that up. And I know she will. She loves music. She just, as she's playing, she's going over her notes and everything. She loves it.
I think I've decided the B flat major scale about 20 times in the last week. Out of my head.
Oh my.
Without my instrument.
Well, I believe that's got it.
All right. Great.
You
Good
guys,
job.
great
Yeah.
job,
Oh,
Mama.
awesome.
Great job.